All right, 53% of you have participated. Let me give it a few more seconds. That's 75%. All right, I'm going to close in 5, 4. Get your answers in. 3, 2, and 1. Ending the poll, sharing the results. Can you all see the results? If not, I'll post them here. It looks like 56% of you have heard of Farm-to-ECE before, 44% have not. What experience do you have? 60% of you say none, but you're super excited to learn more. We love to hear that. And 16% have provided some ECE technical assistance, and 13% chose others. So this is great. We're really excited that you all have chosen to come to this session and learn a little bit more. So just quickly, so you know what you've gotten yourself into, we are going to provide an overview of what Farm-to-ECE is. For those of you that have never heard of it, we think it's amazing and are excited to share that with you. And then Sharonda is going to provide a snapshot into what's happening in North Carolina and how it looks on the ground. And then Jeff is going to go over federal policies, opportunities for those policies to align with Farm-to-ECE, and then blow all of your minds with a new approach to QRIS. And then we'll talk about what's next and have an opportunity to have a question and answer session with Sharonda and Caroline and really put them on the spot. So I'm going to hand it off to Jeff.
Great, thank you, Frandy. And you can just go to the next slide. You know, we figured that a number of you probably would be new to Farm-to-ECE. So what we wanted to do is just provide a quick, primer on what it is and sort of why it's so important. We're all early childhood people here, right? So I think, when we think about early childhood, we always talk about it being sort of the foundation, the foundation of literacy, the foundation of school success, the foundation of school, social emotional development. It's also the foundation of nutritional knowledge and behaviors. And so, when we think about sort of some of the work going on, in the field, we worry that, nutrition doesn't sort of rise, doesn't kind of really rise to the same level of importance as some of the other domains. And so, ECE is really about, Farm-to-ECE is really about focusing sort of on health and healthy behaviors and nutritional awareness. And so there are a lot of reasons, barriers to this. There's, the costs of healthy food, there's the lack of knowledge among providers, there's, certain regulatory barriers. And so, what we try to do with Farm-to-ECE is overcome all of those barriers. And if you look at the left side of the slide, we really, we're focusing on 3 things. And, the first is, increasing nutritional awareness among young children and their families about why it's, so important to eat healthy foods. When you look at a lot of the early learning standards across the country, they talk about foods being on a spectrum of least healthy to most healthy. And so part of what Farm-to-ECE does is it really helps to have children understand sort of, what healthy foods are, get them developing taste preferences for healthy foods. That's done through, taste testing of different foods. That's done through curriculum components and supplements that support Farm-to-ECE. And we actually have one on our website that we can put the link in the chat around that. So that's kind of one part of what Farm-to-ECE is. The second is on the right, the green portion of the pie is, it's about sort of procurement. It's about connecting early childhood providers to locally grown healthy foods. And, one of the things that we know is, the farther distance that a food has to travel, the more likely it's going to be processed. And the longer the distance, the more heavily processed it is. And so, building relationships with local farmers and being able to sort of support them and to get food sort of that's locally grown is a big part of this. This is done through, establishing CSAs, central kitchens, and really working on policies that promote local procurement. And then on the bottom, And I won't talk too much about this. And if you just look at Sharonda's background, you can see sort of, the way that we try to promote the development of local gardens at early care and education programs. It's an excellent educational tool at these programs, improves the quality. It's actually been shown that when kids were working in the gardens, it supports kind of their social emotional health. It's a good way to sort of, teach all kinds of different lessons in the farm, math, science, things like that. And so, when we think about Farm-to-ECE, we're really thinking about these three components: increasing nutritional awareness, connecting to local farmers and procuring locally sourced foods, and then the development of local gardens at early care and education sites. And then if you think about, and if you look at the right-hand side of the slide, one of the things that we work on is really trying to bring Farm-to-ECE to scale in a number of different sites. So we've been working with Georgia, Iowa, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And what's interesting about Farm-to-ECE and what makes it kind of so difficult to sort of scale is that you're really trying to work across two systems. So you're working, in the food system, where the focus is really on the production, aggregation, and distribution of food, and sort of trying to get that work for early childhood programs. And then you've got the early childhood system, where you've got such fragmentation around Head Start and childcare and different regulations, and a lack of sort of adequate financing. And so we try to work sort of across the systems to promote policies that are going to really support Farm-to-ECE. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the policy opportunities in a minute. But essentially, what we've been able to do in a number of states is really develop the appropriate coalitions to try to move this. And so if you look at sort of the outer ring of the circle, really when we think about how we're trying to move this forward, you need an ECE advocacy organization. You need a what we're calling a proof of concept, like some childcare program within the state where you can take policymakers to show this is what Farm-to-ECE is in practice. These are the benefits. And you need a food advocacy organization, and then you also need a food hub, like some way of really supporting the aggregation and distribution of food to early childhood programs. I think when we think about sort of one of the fundamental barriers to this, it's really about the scale. It's about the small size of early childhood programs. And we actually had a conference in North Carolina where we brought some food vendors to the conference, and they were talking about, little people, little orders. And so it's really difficult to sort of develop the scale with early childhood programs to make it worthwhile for farmers and distributors to really, work with these programs, particularly around the locally sourced piece. And so, we're working on that around shared services models, and there's a bunch of other ways to sort of develop scale. And I know Sharonda will probably talk a little bit about that. Next slide, Franny. And so, when we think about, policy opportunities, the framework that we always use is the CDC spectrum of opportunities. And I don't know, I know that Emily's going to put it in the chat. I don't know if a lot of you have heard of it. I'm just wondering if you could put in the chat whether or not this is something that you already have seen. But what we like about it is it really provides the core elements of policy that we try to connect to support Farm-to-ECE. And you can see kind of, around, sort of around the circle there, starting on the left, licensing and administrative regulations. How do you, help to promote, those, licensing to promote Farm-to-ECE. The child and adult care food program is really important for Farm-to-ECE because it provides additional funding for meals. And you're looking at it, and a number of states are actually supplementing CACFP to support locally sourced or locally grown foods. You've got the 10 cents a meal program in Michigan, New Mexico Grown program, where you're taking sort of the CACFP program, and if the child care provider can show that they are procuring locally, they will get additional funding through CACFP. And then you've got the quality rating and improvements systems, which I think all of you know. These are the ways that a number of states are measuring quality. I'll talk more about that later, but we're trying to figure out how do you support indicators that are connected to Farm-to-ECE to incentivize the use of that among programs. By making it sort of part of the rating, you get more points in a QRIS if you're doing Farm-to-ECE, and we see that in Pennsylvania. They give bonus points around that. Obviously, there's funding and finance, which is a big piece of this, and we actually have an entire guide that talks about the different funding streams that can be used for Farm-to-ECE. And I think this is a place where we're still still working. I'll talk a little bit about sort of inadequate financing in early childhood, and the fact that we're really just working on compensation and getting providers the compensation that they deserve. And so how do you sort of start with that, and also figure out other funding methods to support Farm-to-ECE at the same time. And then there's a lot around professional development and technical assistance, where if we're getting the indicators in the quality rating and improvement system, then the professional development follows, because you always want to sort of align sort of the PD with sort of the state's conception of quality. So we're doing a lot of that. And what we see, sort of, if you look at the top, one of the big barriers to Farm-to-ECE is really around just the physical infrastructure of the child care provider. Do they have enough food storage? Do they have sort of a kitchen where they can do scratch cooking? And so there's a lot of opportunities right now with sort of ARPA, where they're giving grants around capacity building, where you can leverage some of that funding to support improvements to your program, to be able to do to get the storage and develop the kitchen where you can do the scratch cooking that's a part of Farm-to-ECE. And then, looking over to the right, the early learning standards, the expectations for what children should know and be able to do. We always try to align sort of our Farm-to-ECE work with standards related to nutritional knowledge. And, there's a number of programs or a number of states that have nutrition as an early learning standard. It's also sort of in the Head Start early learning outcomes framework. Family engagement is a big part of this, because what we're trying to do is kind of bring the families in. They work in the gardens, and we're trying to figure out ways in which, taking that nutritional knowledge that, the children are gaining in their programs, and sort of expanding it to the family so it carries over into the home. Culture is a big part of this, making sure that the foods are culturally appropriate as well. And then we'll talk a little bit in a minute about some of the emerging opportunities moving forward in policy. So that's kind of a sort of a long-winded primer of Farm-to-ECE, both in terms of sort of what it is and some of the opportunities that we're trying to leverage currently. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But I wanted to hand it over to Sharonda to talk a little bit about how all of this is happening in practice in North Carolina.
Thank you so much, Jeff. So when we look at Farm-to-ECE, as Jeff just said, we look at the fact that we're trying to leverage the fact that children in our state, in different states, they live in areas in which food accessibility is not feasible for them. And a part of the initiative is to make sure that we're trying to bring food access, fresh fruits and vegetables, to our children so that they can have a chance at having a healthy life. Here in North Carolina, in 2016, we started with a collaborative approach to doing so. And what that basically means is that we looked at different partners teaming up together to help bring this initiative into fruition. So along with our initiative through NC State, North Carolina A&T, and North Carolina USDA, we also looked at the partnerships within all the different counties. We looked at extension offices. We looked and partnered with farmers and different distributors to help make this happen. So when we look at, again, at the collaborative approach, we come together and have 3 different learning sessions throughout a year. And within those learning sessions, we talk about the farmers, we talk about gardening, we talk about racial equity, and we talk about the local food procurement and also how to cook with and for our children. So we have 4 basic components in Farm-to-ECE that we build this initiative around. And we try to get teachers and directors and centers to understand that the Farm-to-ECE approach, it's an approach that it takes everybody, not just one person can do this. It's not about just that one teacher that may have a passion for gardening going outside and doing the gardens for the whole center. It's about that teacher that maybe they can write very well and they can help come up with recipes or newsletters so that they can send that information home to parents. It's about talking about the past with the adults in the centers as well as the children, and understanding why our areas have become barren from food, why there are no farmers of color in their areas. And it's talking about those issues with racial equity aspects and identifying them and being honest about them and looking at how we can change them for the future. When we do this initiative, we look at it through the lens of a theory of change, because we need to be those change agents. And we took that vow to, when we decided we were going to work with children, to do the best that we could by them and for them. And this is one of the ways that we do that. And looking at that theory of change, it takes everybody. So again, that one person in the center that can garden, let her garden. Let her work with all of the children in your center. And that's fine, because then the other person that can cook, maybe that person can help with taste tests, or actually they can help with the cook as well. Maybe that's something that can be taken off of the director's plate, and the cook of the center and maybe a teacher could work together on nutritious menus that they can incorporate with fresh blueberries, fresh strawberries. That's what's out right now. You know, you can sit there and do counting and different activities with your children, and that's what we want. So talking a little bit more about that, just so you can kind of get a picture of a typical day with Farm-to-ECE, we don't ask that you create different lesson plans. We know that you already are looking at either creative curriculum in your classrooms, you're looking at North Carolina Foundations, you're looking at what NAEYC says, you're looking at what Itters and Ecker says, and whatever other curriculums that you use. So we're not saying you need to take this and it's another new curriculum. No, we're saying we have resources to help you with your lesson plans. Everything is done for you so that you can come up with activities within your classrooms. If you're doing a lesson with maybe toddlers and you want to talk to them in regards to their colors or counting, there you can get strawberries, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, different, though you have different berries, and you can put those in front of the children and you can ask them to count them. They can take their berries and they can try to make something with their berries. At the same time, they get to eat them, because we know that they're toddlers and that's what they're going to want to do. And that's okay with that. That's what we want them to do. And they get to explore it. And maybe you introduce cucumbers and maybe carrots, so that the children do get a sense of all the fruits and vegetables, but you're also looking at the colors with them and going over that with the children. And that's what we want to have happen. So again, when I do talk back again to our initiative, we did start in 2016, and we started with home child care centers and regular center-based centers. And since then we have grown, and we've grown to the point that now we have also incorporated Head Start centers. And because we realized that was a missing component, because we have so many children within the Head Start centers and also in North Carolina pre-K centers. And we want to reach out to those children that may be at risk and make sure that we are engaging their families and the communities around them, as well as the children themselves. That's what a big piece of the initiative is. And when doing so, we're looking at sending out things to the families. You're inviting those families into your centers so that those families can feel a part of the center and their community. When you start having those gardens on your playgrounds, it's okay to tell the parents, you know, come on out on the weekends and bring your children. They have a safe place to go and play. But at the same time, if you help us in our garden, maybe they can help you with weeding. Maybe they can take fruit or vegetables from the garden that would ripen and not be good when you go back on Monday, and that family can have some food in their house over the weekend. That's what we want to start looking at, and looking at it from a broader lens, that it's not just about standing outside in a backyard, on your childcare playground or outdoor learning environment, just having a garden. That dirt and those green sprouts coming out of the ground, you think of those sprouts as your children. You want to see them thrive. You want to see them produce. And that's what we want to see with our children, because our children are fruits of the future. So if we don't go in now and start tilling and seeding and sowing all we can into our children, then what type of future are we going to have, and what type of future are they going to have? That's a part of why we do what we do. And we want to engage all of you to start engaging your communities. And that means reaching out to the farmers in your communities. It could be that you have a farmers market that's down the street or road from you all, and maybe you can start talking to some of those farmers there. Maybe they can come and visit into your centers, so children have an understanding of where their food comes from. For those whose moms and dads work in the fields, that's a great opportunity for them to have that and to feel proud of their parents, because maybe their parents can come in and talk about the farming aspect. That's something that we need to get back to, so we can start building these thriving communities again that there once were. And all it takes is us banding together to say, this is what we're going to do in the name of our children. And again, within your communities, when you're looking at those connections, in every county across North Carolina, all 100 counties, we have North Carolina Extension agents and agencies. And within those agencies, there are port specialists, ag specialists, FCS agents, family consumer science. That's what I was trying to get out. I'm sorry. All of those different agents are in your communities and are so willing to come out and help, so that you don't have to feel that you're doing this alone and you're not standing there saying, I don't know what I'm doing. We're here, Caroline and myself. And what I love to do, that I got to start doing again this just recently, this month, as a matter of fact, or last month in April, was to go back out and train in the centers, to do different activities with you as teachers, directors, partnership affiliates, extension agents, and talk to you and show you what Farm-to-ECE can look like in these classrooms, in these centers. And I love to do that. And I'm willing to do that at any given time. So all you need to do is reach out to us, and we are here. We're also here to make sure we try to connect you to other people within your areas that can help you as well. So you may be calling in or looking at me right now, all the way from Cherokee, North Carolina, or all the way from the border between Tennessee and here. We're still here for you. And if we can't help you, then we're going to reach out to our partners within the state or within local or in neighboring states to also help you, depending on where you may be. Because what I said at the beginning is true now. It is about our children and their futures. I do want to turn it over to my coworker and my supervisor, Caroline Hunley. She is going to talk a little bit more about Farm-to-ECE in regards to, again, with QRIS and different aspects. And then we'll go into a Q&A, as Franny said. And please feel free to ask questions, email us, what have you. But for right now, I'm going to turn it over to Caroline.
Thank you so much, Sharana. That was beautiful. It is all about the children. And we are definitely here for everyone. I have posted some links to our website, to your county's extension center, things like that in the chat. So be sure to check that out. And I'm going to go into some resources for QRIS, actually in the Q&A about QRIS. And for now, I'm going to hand it back over to Jeff.
Great. Thanks, Caroline. For any of you who don't mind putting up the slides again. So I think what we'll do is, we originally sort of envisioned this as a conversation about Build Back Better, and sort of some of the policy opportunities for Farm-to-ECE in Build Back Better. But I think, what we can do instead is really just kind of talk a little bit about some of the policy trends in the field of early childhood, and talk about sort of ways in which those trends are going to be very beneficial for Farm-to-ECE. So, Fran, if you could go to the next slide, and just kind of thinking about sort of all of the work that is going on in early childhood right now, and sort of the fact, even though Build Back Better did not move, the field is still working on these core goals for ECE policy, which I've placed on the left. And so probably the biggest goal that we're working on is fair compensation for ECE professionals. And that includes just kind of lifting the floor of compensation, but also, working to create pay parity across Head Start, pre-K, and childcare. And so we saw a lot of those elements kind of in the Build Back Better language, and we're continuing to work on that. And I think one of the reasons why that's so important for Farm-to-ECE is that we need to stabilize the workforce initially before we can really be working on these these core quality components. And I think you hear a lot from early childhood providers or from administrators where they're providing all of this professional development to providers, but there's so much turnover that the professional development just kind of walks out the door, right? And so, one of the reasons why compensation would be so important for Farm-to-ECE is it really, I call it supporting like the stickiness of professional development. It helps it stick because, those who are receiving the professional development will stay employed at those early childhood programs. So compensation is key. It's something that we've been working on, and it's something that would be very important for Farm-to-ECE and any sort of quality initiative in the early childhood field. So that's one big goal, that we continue to strive for. And you're seeing some progress across some states, but it's something that we really have to tackle at the federal level. And then, the second, main goal in ECE is really around sort of the changing conception of what quality is in early childhood. I think what is interesting, and my colleague, Dr. Kelly Eder, did a blog on this that I would encourage you guys to read, is that our current QRIS systems across states do not do a very good job predicting what is most important, which is child outcomes. And so what we're seeing is kind of this movement across the country to change QRIS systems from a set of quality indicators, these benchmarks that define different levels, to taking more of a continuous quality improvement approach. And I think that's really important for Farm-to-ECE, because as providers start to use the Farm-to-ECE activities, you want to think about it as a progression about how to improve on sort of the activities over time. And the country is moving also towards what is most predictive of high quality child outcomes, which are these teacher-child interactions. And Sharonda gave some really great examples about how you would use different Farm-to-ECE activities to sort of support high quality interactions, whether it's counting blueberries and then letting the kids eat them, working in the gardens and things like that. And so, part of what we need to be thinking about for those of us who are really engaged and concerned about the amount of nutrition education that goes on in early childhood programs is, as states are continuing to change their QRIS systems, how do you ensure that healthy food and nutrition are key elements of the quality measurement system that will be replacing the current QRISs, and then thinking about what would be a CQI process for Farm-to-ECE. And then, another big goal, and this sort of is directly related to the compensation issue, is how do we pay providers for the true cost of quality and not at the market rate? So as all of you know, States are typically using market rate surveys or have been historically using market rate surveys to determine what the child care subsidy rate is. And we know that that is not an adequate sort of indication of what true high quality care costs, because it's reflecting what parents can pay and not actually the true cost of quality. And so you see a number of states that are moving from these market rate surveys to true cost of care models. One of the things that was in Build Back Better was including, cost of quality estimation models. I'm going to talk in a second about how that's also included in the Republican bill. So that's very encouraging. And we'll talk about that in a second. But I think one of the things as states are doing these cost of quality models and this estimation is, we need to make sure that, food and nutrition, Farm-to-ECE is incorporated into these cost of quality models. And so that's another thing that we continue to work on. And I think, just coming out of COVID and thinking about COVID and kind of the way in which, it absolutely devastated the early childhood field. I think we're basically at sort of 90% capacity compared to where we were in the year prior to COVID. And thinking about sort of, what are the policies that are increasing and building, the supply of ECE, and how to sort of, how do you leverage that funding and those initiatives to ensure that, programs are including storage and kitchens into their new capacity, being able to sort of, have facilities that will allow you to do scratch cooking and to do the Farm-to-ECE models. And then finally, we're seeing a lot of states trying to increase funding and financing of state ECE systems. You saw a number of states, New Mexico most recently, really taking their money from the American Rescue Plan Act and using it to support providers and families. And so we're hoping, like, as the years go on and the ARPA money starts to sort of fade away, that we are going to be able to sustain sort of those gains and making sure that nutrient dense food, nutrition education are all part of sort of the models that are going forward, and the financing that comes later. Next slide. So I guess, we should talk a little bit about what happened to Build Back Better, since, it didn't happen. I think, what's, really interesting is, so, I'm in DC, and, this weekend was the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And so they had Trevor Noah was the comedian that gave kind of the keynote, and he's up there on stage with President Biden, and he's like starts his kind of speech with, it's so great to be here with the most powerful man in the country. And then he points to Senator Manchin as the most powerful man. So Senator Manchin is really, because of sort of where he is in the Senate, is really the one that sort of decided the fate of Build Back Better. So he decided, earlier in the year, even it was like December, that he would not vote for Build Back Better. And then he provided a counter proposal back about 2 months ago on March 3rd that did not include early care and education. And so his proposal was that, he wanted to reform the tax code to ensure that it was fair for everyone, and that would actually increase revenue because it was going to tax corporations at a higher rate. And then he wanted to utilize that additional revenue for specific changes like prescription drugs and climate change. Again, nothing on early childhood. And then a bunch of members sent a letter to the president urging that they include ECE in any reconciliation package. That didn't get much traction, even though that's not moving forward. I think one of the things that Build Back Better did is, once you have this legislative language, it does provide a potential framework for future legislation. And you can actually see that in the child care and CCDBG reauthorization that was put forth by your two North Carolina senators. And Franny, if you want to sort of move to the next slide. So the Child Care Development Block Grant is the primary funding for child care subsidies, and it includes a set aside for quality. And so Senator Scott from North Carolina and Senator Burr worked together on a piece of legislation that would reauthorize CCDBG. I think one of the sort of the downsides to the reauthorization is it didn't include any additional funding, but hopefully we'll be able to work on that. But what was really fascinating about their reauthorization proposal is it did contain significant aspects of Build Back Better. And I think one of the, and I'm kind of going to go through some of them, and Emily has put the legislation in the chat if you want to check it out later. But essentially, one of the things that Build Back Better did was it increased the eligibility threshold for childcare subsidies. And this reauthorization bill also does that. It increases it to 150% of state median income. And there's a condition on it that the state has to ensure that those below 85% of state median income have had the opportunity to receive the service. And once that happens, the eligibility goes up to 150. There's also a provision that looks very similar to Build Back Better about how much parents can pay or need to pay. And so there's a sliding co-payment scale where those that are making up to 150% of poverty would pay no more than 7%. Those under 75% of the state median income would pay nothing. And then there's a sliding fee in between those two. It also requires the cost estimation model that I was talking about. So we're trying to move away from market rate surveys to this cost estimation model. Expands the use of quality funds to support ECE. And then it also contains provisions and funding to increase the supply. So, all of that work around, creating storage and kitchens and can be done through the supply and expansion subgrants. And so, was not as bad as we thought for a Republican proposal, has lots of, opportunities and mirrors some of the Build Back Better work. And so, just wanted to put that on your radar because I think that is going to be something that we're going to need to be talking about sort of moving forward. Next slide. Great, just wanted to talk a little bit more about this new approach to QRIS, and go to the next slide, Franny. So essentially, they've got a lot of states that are moving away from sort of the levels with the very specific indicators and the point systems to a more of a CQI approach. This is the approach that is being proposed in Michigan, where you can see sort of on the left, like, the foundational level of the QRIS is still sort of licensing, is that, health and safety. And then you've got these different tiers that are really reflecting different points on the CQI, in the CQI process. So at the lowest level, providers are reflecting on quality. They're doing a self-reflection. And so they would complete this, self-reflection sort of questionnaire, thinking about their program practices, and that would put them at that level. Then they would move to develop a quality improvement plan where they would look at their self-reflection results and then think about how to improve quality. And so that's in the enhancing quality section. So that would take you to the next level of the QRIS. And then at the top level would be demonstrating quality. So thinking about everything you reflected on, the ways in which you are developing a plan to improve and the ways that you're improving, and then using sort of the class as a way to demonstrate that you've actually met the quality. And so this is kind of, just a fundamentally different way of thinking about QRIS compared to what we have now. And you see a lot of states sort of moving to this more CQI approach. Next slide. And then just kind of, again, thinking about sort of the quality, model, it's really the way that we're thinking about it is like the foundation of quality is really around sort of the roots of the tree, which is the compensation, stabilizing the workforce, making sure that they're adequately compensated, then moving up and then thinking more about sort of teacher-child interactions and ensuring that you have the fundamental interactions that are producing sort of outcomes. And then, once you have the outcomes sort of the interactions sort of set, you're moving into areas of specialization, which are the branches and the leaves of the tree. And so, thinking about sort of, stabilization first, interaction second, specializations third. Next slide. And then I just wanted to share sort of, we talked a little bit about cost estimation models. I just wanted to share sort of New Mexico's cost estimation study. I think what is interesting about that that model is that it does include some funding for food and food preparation, but there's not a lot of staffing money in there. And so what we want to be thinking about as we're moving forward with these cost estimation models is to make sure that nutrition is well represented. Next slide. And then just talking a little bit about what's next. And so, just thinking about sort of the cost of quality, making sure that Farm-to-ECE is incorporated into these models, thinking about the capacity building. There's a lot of ARPA money that's currently out there around capacity building. And we want to make sure that as we think about sort of moving forward with capacity building money, that we're thinking about Farm-to-ECE, kitchen equipment, storage, outdoor space for gardens. And then, around these new conceptions of quality, just making sure that Farm-to-ECE is a part of these new conceptions. So if you think about the tree where you've got sort of the specialization sort of, at the top, can we think about Farm-to-ECE as a micro-credential? How do we include it in CQI initiatives and things like that? So next slide. And then just in, as you move forward with this work, I think, we have to remember that we're in the middle of a workforce crisis, and that we need to think about what kind of role that Farm-to-ECE might play in worker retention. Does it help bring joy to workers? Does it help with the behavioral issues in children? And we're still sort of trying to move the field from compliance to excellence. And how do we do that? And a lot of the work that Sharonda does, with Head Start programs, you have to sort of make the case around how it sort of meets the program performance standards. And then, really thinking about these proofs of concept and doing these kind of peer-to-peer conversations and how they work best. And then, really finding the proof of concept is really key. Now I'll hand it back over to Franny for the Q&A with Sharon.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeff. So we have built in just 10 to 15 minutes to ask a few more questions of Sharonda and Caroline. And I know that Sharonda has a video she wants to show. And then after that, I know there have been some questions in the chat, one about ARPA, and we will do our best to address those starting around 11 EST. So Sharonda, did you want to show your video first?
Yes, I do. Are you guys, can you see this?
We can see that.
It's the Farm-to-ECE with 6 different videos up here.
Yes.
Okay. Well, somebody when I was talking, you did put in that you would like to see like it in action, basically. And so I just want to go over real quick. We do have a website, and Caroline is going to drop that into the chat box for you all. And so it is our CEF's website, which stands for Center for Environmental Farming Systems. And when you go across the top, it'll have food system initiatives. And if you hit that button and scroll down, you will find Farm-to-ECE. And on that, you will see that we have, as you see over here on the side, a plethora of different resources for you. We have videos. We have shown you how to do these activities in the classrooms with the children. We have pictures. We have learning bursts for you. And learning bursts are different training modules. They're only an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, so that you can learn about things as far as racial equity to container gardening. Maybe you want to do aquaponics. So we have a lot of different things up there that you would not even think of. If you just click on that Learning Burst resource library, you're going to be very amazed. Now, this video is from Follow the Sun, and it actually highlights what Farm-to-ECE is. And so I would like to play this. It's about 3 minutes, and that way this will help give you a little bit of a visual to go along with everything that we've talked about today.
My name is Tanisha Tyson. I'm the owner and director of Follow the Sun Child Care, and it's located in Greenville, North Carolina. The thing I'm most proud of with the Farm-to-ECE activity is the farmers market. We did a pop-up farmers market at our child care center. We had thought about it, but it was just going to be like the children selling maybe a cucumber to a parent in the afternoon during pickup, just something small. But we put it on social media, and it just grew. It was a big deal. Even one of the people who's running for mayor in our city, she even came out to support the kids. A local media company called me the day of and said, can we come out and take pictures of your farmers market? We saw it on your Facebook page. Channel 9 News came and did an interview with us and did a story on our farmers market. Our local Chamber of Commerce, they came and took pictures and put it in their publication. And it was just a big deal. We were kind of like the talk of the town. People I didn't even know reached out to me. Like, it's a local exhibit in one of the towns nearby. The lady saw us on Facebook and she saw us on the news. And so she inboxed me and said, can I come talk to your kids about how slaves used the crops that you're growing on their journey to freedom? So she's from the Washington Underground Railroad. It's in Washington, North Carolina. And she came to the center and she bought watermelon and showed the kids how slaves used watermelon to cook chicken, how they used sunflowers as clues that, you know, too many eyes are watching, so you need to lay low. How if they saw a turn up on the ground, they would know that someone's going to turn up soon to come and help you to the next destination. So it was like one thing just connected to another. It was just a learning experience in all areas, you know. The county team and the affinity groups were awesome. Like, they were like there not just for like the resources, the things that we needed, but information wise. The local collaboration team, the affinity groups, and our local Martin Pitt partnership, they were like so instrumental in helping us get things started. The people from the farmers market were really patient with the children. They answered questions. They talked to them about all the foods, and they were just really patient. They were so nice. So when the teachers came back and told me about how nice the people were, I was like, we should have a farmers market. It was like more than just our center. We partnered with the local farmers from the farmers market. And a lot of our parents are low-income families who receive EBT. So that gave them an opportunity when they come pick their children up from childcare, they can use their EBT card. So we had a lot of parents that left out with bags full of collards and tomatoes and cucumbers and whatever else that we had to sell. And so it just like really gave parents the opportunity to even try things they wouldn't normally buy themselves in the grocery store. So the fact that it was at the center and they can get it there without having to stop to the grocery store on the way home, it just made it available to them. If we can give them recipe cards with like something quick and easy you can do at home, using the fresh vegetables and fruit that you bought from our farmers market, you know, just different things like that. And even the children, a lot of times people don't think children are paying attention, but they are. Like for snack, we have like apples. So a little boy, he was eating his apple, and he said, I'm going to save my seeds and I'm going to grow apples. Like, that was such a big deal in the center because he made the connection that, hey, apples come from seeds, and that's something he would have thought about before. It was like making the connection, coming full circle. It was such a big deal. Like, this whole experience has been a big deal, not only for the kids, but for the staff, and it's for me too, you know, and our parents too. Like, we were like the talk, like I said, the talk of the town. People were bragging on us, you know. I think this would be an awesome thing for other centers to do. There was so many teaching opportunities during this whole experience.
Okay, so we had this here for you so you can see Farm-to-ECE in action. You could get to understand a little bit better about how you can connect with your community members and how important it is. Farm-to-ECE is not just with our itty bitties, it's about the communities that they're in. And I have to keep stressing that because the community is you. And we have to figure this out so that we have better outcomes, so that these babies going to school don't have diabetes and cholesterol issues or heart issues in first and second grade. We have to make the turn now so that they are still there when we're older and they can take care of us. So without further ado, Caroline is going to unmute herself and we are ready to take some of your questions.
Yeah, so I wanted to briefly talk about this video too. It is so inspirational. It sounds like people really loved it just as much as we do. We do have an opportunity. I'm going to put in the chat a link to the North Carolina Farm to Preschool Network. That's the landing page there. You can sign up for the newsletter at the bottom of that page. There's even more resources on that website. And it's hosted by the Appalachian Sustainable Agriculture Project and our initiative and the Department of Health and Human Services, DPH, Department of Public Health. And it's a statewide network. We all get together. We talk about ways to promote Farm-to-ECE in the state, ways that we can advocate for our ECE programs that want to do this work, but maybe they're hitting barriers, policy barriers that we can kind of help them with. So if you're interested in joining the advisory committee, that's available to you. If you're interested in just getting the newsletter, there's a question about grant funding. That's a great way to keep abreast of grant funding, things that are going on in the state, fun new recipes, CACFP aligned recipes, everything like that. It's just a ton of resources, and it's a monthly newsletter, so that would be great too. And I'm mentioning the network because we have some funding from the CDC to do some more of these videos that highlight ECE programs across the state. So you just saw Tanisha's video. You saw how inspiring it was. She's done such great work, and it was an honor to highlight her in this way. And since we do have funding for a few more videos, we wanted to extend this opportunity to y'all. If you have rock stars in your county that are doing Farm-to-ECE, maybe they've done it for a while and you want to celebrate them and the work that they're doing, please again reach out to us, and we would love to send our amazing videographer down there, conduct some interviews, get some great footage, and extend that opportunity to y'all. So please do reach out to us. That's an exciting opportunity that's just available this year, and it'd be great to connect with you in that way. So Franny, do you want to, without further ado, start the Q&A?
Yes. So we have some pre-prepared questions, but we would love to hear questions from all of you. So if you do have questions, if you could just raise your hand in Zoom, because there are 93 of you, and as fun as it would be to untangle all of you speaking at once, we just appreciate it if you take that initiative. And I'll start. We did have a question in the chat that I'm going to field to Jeff very quickly. So the question is, what might your messaging be to representatives who are sharing sort of the talking point? What about all the ARPA dollars? This isn't our advocacy. We are being met with the talking point as a blockade. They're saying like, you don't need more funds because there is so much ARPA funding. So what's the advice you would have for this person?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's unfortunate that we're hearing this across a number of states. But I would say that, the ARPA funding really was designed to get us back to baseline, right? These are recovery dollars from COVID, and, we haven't gotten back to baseline. We're about at 90% capacity compared to where we were before COVID. And, we're headed for a real crisis, moving forward as things return to normal. And, to be able to get, some of the members of your business community to engage in that conversation with you, I think is going to be really important. Bloomberg just last week put out this amazing article that I think if we can put it in the chat, I would encourage you to read as talking points. The article is, childcare workers are quitting the industry for good in the United States and not coming back. And so, it kind of goes through the statistics related to capacity and sort of the impending crisis. And so being able to share, I think, media stories like that from, business-oriented publications is going to be important too.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Emily, our colleague, just threw the Bloomberg article in the chat, so all of you can see. Not seeing any raised hands. You all are a quiet and timid bunch. So I'm going to throw a question at Caroline. So Jeff talked a lot about QRIS, and I was hoping you could talk a little bit about how your experiences with Farm-to-ECE have interacted with your QRIS system. And I know you have a recognition program. I was hoping you could talk about that and its relevancy to our North Carolina participants.
Yeah, sure. So we would love QRIS to support Farm-to-ECE happening in local programs. And so one way to do this is to really acknowledge and celebrate the work that they're doing so that we can prove that folks are interested in this, that it's something that more ECE programs want to do, that it improves quality in ECE programs. And so our voluntary recognition program is a way to kind of show the QRIS system that all those things are true. And so DPH is actually working with us now in the North Carolina Farm to Preschool Network on a recognition program. We piloted it once in 2020, and we're piloting it again now. I'm going to put the website in the chat. It talks about the initial pilot that we did. And essentially the goal here is to celebrate programs that have been doing Farm-to-ECE and also encourage more programs to do Farm-to-ECE. And so it's connected with Go Knapsack. That's the other partner that we're working with on this. And essentially, as folks do more and more achieve more and more Go Knapsack best practices, they are able to get more and more recognition through this program. So of course, we're working with them on the Farm-to-ECE component, but there's also 7 content areas in Go Knapsack. And so this could really help centers that are already doing a lot of this, and maybe they want to do a little bit more, to get recognized for those efforts, to get some more resources to help them kind of move their health work, their culture of health forward in their center. So the voluntary recognition program is called REACH, which stands for Recognizing ECE's Advancing Children's Healthy Habits. Lynn Policastro is on today too. So she's also been spearheading this work with a grant that she initially got, Wake County Smart Start. And so she brought us together. It was Lynn from Wake County Smart Start, our initiative, Go Knapsack, and then Ellie Morris is also helping us, who y'all probably know. She used to be at Go Knapsack. So we have a whole team here and we're putting this together, and we're so excited to kind of get input from both providers and from the Partnership for Children to see how we can make this recognition program something that's useful for the whole state. And of course, useful for ECE programs without being too much of a burden on documentation. How can we really help take centers to the next level as far as advancing healthy habits for their children? So that's one way that we're really hoping to dovetail Farm-to-ECE and QRIS. The other thing I wanted to mention that is a resource that the North Carolina Farm to Preschool Network put out a couple years ago now is alignment with, I'm just going to drop the link in the chat again. It's again on the Farm to Preschool Network page, but it's called Reach for the Stars, and it aligns ECHRS, and there's an ITERS one too, but I don't see this on the website yet. But it aligns ECHRS with Farm-to-ECE activities. So like Sharonda was describing, it's not something extra that our centers are doing, right? It's something that can weave into their day. So all the ECHRS and ITERS indicators, they align really well with Farm-to-ECE. So instead of being like, oh gosh, I've got to do ECHRS and I've got to do the garden and I've got to do this, it's like, no, it's all really beautifully aligned. So I'm going to put that in the chat so you guys can check out that resource. We're really excited about that one. And I think that's it. Thanks, Granny.
Well, thank you for sharing those amazing resources. I love that you pointed out that it's all aligned in like one streamlined way, because I think that fits in really nicely with Jeff's presentation on CQI and Sharonda's point that Farm-to-ECE can easily be integrated into what you're already doing. So I think I'm still not seeing questions, and which probably means we've just answered all of them, and this has been the best presentation ever. That's my read from this. But if you all do have questions, please contact us directly, and I am going to put all of you on the spot. But first, I'm going to ask, Sharonda. So you may have all noticed Sharonda has some amazing aphorisms and sayings, and I pulled one out from her speech earlier where she said that think of the sprouts as your children. Our children are the fruits of the future. And then she said that we are the change agents, that it takes everyone in our community. And everyone has a role to support our little sprouts. So I would like to know, Sharonda, first from you, what's one thing that we can all do in our community as a next step? And just to put the audience on the spot, we're going to be asking you this question in a second. So think about it while Sharonda answers, and then get ready to either say your answer out loud or post it in the chat. So Sharonda, how can we be the change agent in our own community for Farm-to-ECE moving forward?
Each of you can be a change agent by just deciding you're going to go out and you're going to make a difference in a child's life by helping figure out the nutrition aspects in your area. So if you're living in an area and you know that it takes forever to get to a store, because I talked to someone just the other day, and she grew up in which it took like at least 30 minutes to 45 minutes to get to a grocery store. You know, that's when we have to go out and talk to farmers and talk to them about having their fruit stands, which are farmers markets, and making sure that people stop there, and making sure maybe that they go to people's homes and, you know, maybe a delivery service, or connecting them to people in the community that can help get the fresh fruits and vegetables, maybe from the food bank, from churches, to them. Because that's going to be the first thing, is honestly not sitting by silent while you watch as stuff like that happens. Because if you just sit there silent and don't do anything, don't act on anything, then what's going to happen? Nothing. At least if you try, something could happen. That's better than doing nothing. And when you're talking about children that don't have a way to do for themselves, we have to be out there and be the advocates for them, because those children were not asked to be placed here on earth. We brought them here, and we need to do what's best for them. And we have to be that change in their lives and be those role models that they need for the change to happen.
All right, you all have a serious responsibility. Share with us what you're going to do next. In the next 2 or 3 minutes, throw it in the chat, raise your hand, speak up. We want to know what your next action is going to be to support Farm-to-ECE. Thank you, Stuart. I love that, Carrie Ann. Oh, beautiful raised beds. They should look as gorgeous as Sharonda's.
Yeah.
And the picture back of me is actually a center in Raleigh, North Carolina, a safe place for children. And it was, it's a home child care center at that. So it is possible to create beautiful gardens like this within the confines of what you already have. You don't have to have billions of dollars or millions of dollars to come in and have people to do all of this stuff for you. It's about communities and people coming together again, being the change agent, donating time, donating flowers, donating soil to help. That makes the difference.
Oh, I love all of this.
Ooh, I love the mention of child care health consultants. That's wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah, and talking to the teachers you work with.
Mm-hmm. Oh, great.
Yeah,
Working with master gardeners. We love that.
And that's the big piece too, talking with the teachers, getting them into the buy-in and understanding that it takes them, because they're on the front line with our children every day. Every day.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Sharonda. Thank you to Caroline. Thank you to Jeff. We really appreciate all of you attending the presentation. We hope that you'll feel comfortable reaching out to any of us with questions. As Sharonda said, none of us are alone in this. We are all in this together. So. And I think there was a survey that Smart Start maybe wanted everyone to fill out. Eric, or Courtney, did you want to?
Yes.
There we go.
I put it in the chat there.
Okay.
And we also do have a raffle giveaway from Lakeshore Learning, one of our sponsors. If y'all have concluded, I will.
Yes, we have concluded. Thank you to everyone. We really appreciate your help and participation.
Yes, thank you all for fantastic session. And yeah, seeing the garden behind Sharonda the whole time has been really, really nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do have a giveaway from Lakeshore Learning, one of our sponsors, and it is a washable tactile pillow, a set of washable tactile pillows. And I have randomly selected Michelle James as the winner for this. So if Michelle could, you can private message me your email address and we will get in contact with you on how to deliver this to you. If you are still in the room, yes, you appear to be still in the room. But yeah, I'd like to thank everybody for attending today, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Put the survey, if you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes and doing the survey for both the whole day and the session, that would be great. And have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Courtney.
Thank you all so much. This was wonderful.
Yay, we had fun. Great.
Michelle
Eric,
James, are you still here?
Her name's still showing.
Name is still showing.
Ooh, yeah.
we might
And I-
have an email on file.
We
I'm
can
not
get her email
sure.
registration. Yeah, it's no big deal. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and end this then, and we'll message her through the registration system. Okay, thanks, y'all.
All righty. See you later.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.